Have any of you guys ever actually sat down and watched the movie Jaws? I was looking at my age demographic, and most of the people who watch my videos are anywhere between the ages of 18 and 25, is the majority of the people who watch my videos. So, this may not reach out to a lot of you, but if you haven't seen Jaws, I highly recommend watching it. It is a phenomenal film and deserves all of the praises that I'm about to give it for a multitude of reasons. So, without further ado, let's hop right in. Now, you might be wondering, why am I covering a movie that is a horror movie in February? Well, the short answer is because I couldn't think of another movie to do. I was making a list of movies that I wanted to cover at some point, and there's a different movie that I want to cover for Halloween, and this movie is just such a good movie, and I feel like it is built upon more than just horror movies. I mean, it has some of the world's greatest minds behind it. It was directed by Steven Spielberg, who, if you're unfamiliar with his works, here's a very short compiled list of some of the works that Steven Spielberg has done, right? We have this movie, Jaws. We have E.T. We have Jurassic Park franchise. We have the Indiana Jones franchise. We have Saving Private Ryan. We have Schindler's List. Some of the world's greatest movies of all time, some of the biggest franchises ever created were created by this man. And this was one of his very first movies. He made this movie when he was only 29 years old and did such an amazing job. Not only was this movie made by one of the greatest movie makers of all time, but it was also composed by one of the greatest composers of all time, John Williams, who did pretty much everything that Steven Spielberg had a part of. On top of that, he did Star Wars, he did Harry Potter, he did Home Alone for some reason. So, to say that this movie starts with some of the best minds behind it and just builds on that would be an understatement, because it has some of the greatest acting I've ever seen in any movie, especially since this movie came out in 1975. Starting off with Quint, who his actor, Robert Shaw, was actually British, and interesting fact, a good chunk of his dialogue was actually written in by a specific character.
When we get them silly bastards down in that rock pile, there'll be some fun. They'll wish their fathers had never met their mothers when they start taking their bottoms out and slamming into them rocks, boy.
His actor, who was actually an actual legit fisherman, that they just kind of took some of his lines and gave it to Quint. One of the best scenes in the entire movie is when Quint is talking about his service during World War II, and specifically on the USS Indianapolis, which, if you don't know, was a real ship that delivered either the first or second atomic bomb and was torpedoed. The crew that survived the torpedo.
A what?
The crew that survived the explosion were left afloat for about 5 days, and I'll just let Quint tell you what happened.
So 1,100 men went in the war. 316 men come out. The Sharks took the rest June the 29th, 1945.
Quint's actor wasn't the only one who did such a good job. The entire crew did a phenomenal job, and some of the most memorable moments in the movie were actually improvised, like the line, "You're gonna need a bigger boat."
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Plus the whole scene where the kid's trying to cheer up the sheriff. The entire movie, the acting was phenomenal. I genuinely cannot express that enough. Now, on top of that, in order to truly express how good this movie is, you have to look at the cinematography as well. There are several scenes where the camera will go from being above the water to below the water to being above the water and being below the water, and the audio mix between the two was just it was so good and like not something you would expect, or at least something I would expect from a movie that came out in 1975. Don't get me wrong, the Bruce effects were a little rough, but it was still, for the time, phenomenal. And to just like push that point home, you guys know the saying blockbuster. This movie created that saying. It is in reference to the fact that like the entire block around a movie theater was like completely filled up because of the sheer amount of people that went to go see this movie. It was the first movie to break over $100 million in the box office. Like it was such a good movie, and it is still really, really good. Now, to dive a little bit deeper into the characters, because I really, really do like Sheriff Brody and specifically Matt Hooper. Their relationship is freaking awesome because it's very bromancy. It starts off with, you know, them just kind of not really knowing how to interact with each other, and then just a bromance blossoms, and by the end of it, they're riding off into the sunset together. It's great. I love it.
Hey, what day is this? It's Wednesday. It's Tuesday, I think.
And the fact that, like, everybody in their life can have somebody who is like the mayor of this town, whose best foil I can think of is like Cornelius Fudge from Harry Potter, who's just in complete denial, and it ends up costing so much to the general population. And for those of you who don't know, this movie was actually based off of the first-time book, Jaws, of the same name, by Peter Benchley, which I think he has written other really good books. Oh yeah, so he wrote Jaws in 1974, which is really kind of crazy because this movie came out in 1975, which means the studios basically pushed. One of the reasons why Bruce was nicknamed the Great White Turd is because they didn't have enough time to like properly make the machines and stuff. And there's something that I want to say to get back to that is a rumor that went along for a very long time. The actress who played as the first kill of the movie, one of the coldest openings in any movie, side rant. There's like this rumor that her screams were like legit. People were under the misconception that she was like legitimately getting hurt, but from what I've read and from what I could find, that wasn't true. She wasn't actually like being hurt or anything. But the guy who wrote the book also wrote a bunch of other great classics like The Deep and The Island and others. I don't actually recognize the other books. Back to what I was saying about the studio. The studio like put such a time crunch on Steven Spielberg and the rest of the crew that they didn't really have enough time to make the machines properly. So it ended up costing so much more time and money because of the fact that they just had to keep redoing shots because they weren't like lining up right. Because the Great White Turd, aka Bruce, was just giving them such a hard time. And it's just like an interesting fact that I wanted to put out there because it's really kind of funny when you get to reading about this movie. The scene where there's the shark like flip-flopping on top of the metal cage was legit footage because they like tried to get some real footage of sharks, and it was just like an accident. Don't worry, the shark was fine, but it was just an accident. And I think that's crazy how they were able to just kind of write that into the script because it was such a cool shot seeing from under the water, seeing the shark, a real shark doing that. If you can't tell, I'm a huge sea life fan. I for a while wanted to get into marine biology, but never really had the opportunity to. And I freaking love this movie. It's such a good movie. Needless to say, this movie is probably one of the greatest, if not one of the most influential horror movies that was ever created at any time period in any, like, since cinema started, right? It started the whole blockbuster trend. It was the first movie to break over $100 million in the box office. It was created and composed by two of the greatest minds in cinema history. And with that being said, I'm gonna have to give this movie a solid 9 out of 10. The only thing that I think could have improved is if they had more time to work on the machinery and made Brucey not look nearly as crusty. So yeah, score of 9 out of 10. And if there's any questions you have about the movie, leave them down below. There's tons and tons more that I could say about this movie, but I don't want to make this video too long, especially since my camera keeps lagging and it's really frustrating me. So if you see any little bits where it's lagging and then it goes back to normal, don't worry, it's not you, it's me. But I guess I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace. All right, a little bit of a PS. This I can't even say it in words. This video or this movie is such a good movie. I want to do so many more of Steven Spielberg's movies. I really want to do more of John Williams movies because I love him. He's probably one of the best composers I've heard. Him and I can't remember his name. He was the one who composed the Dark Knight. Dark Knight composer. I think it's like Hans Zimmer. Is that it? Yep, Hans Zimmer. Yep, John Williams and Hans Zimmer. Freaking fantastic composers. I love their movies. They do such a good job. He specifically, Hans Zimmer, and those two specifically, Hans Zimmer and Steven Spielberg, phenomenal. I love it. But I'll let you guys get back to your day, and I'll see you guys in the next one.